So we're doing the Henro 88 in Shikoku, Japan.
Are we about to start a podcast?
Konnichiwa.
All right, hey everybody, it's Lauren and Adam, and we're doing a question and answer to address some of what we're doing on the 88 temple pilgrimage around Shikoku, Japan. It's a 1,200 kilometer pilgrimage that visits 88 temples and of course goes around the island of Shikoku in the country of Japan. We're right outside of Shimanto City, which is in Kochi Prefecture. Yeah, so it's been really fun because it's very different from what I typically do, which is out in the backcountry, in the mountains, kind of outside of civilization, whereas this is very much in civilization and a part of civilization, and that's a big point of this whole thing is cultural immersion into Japanese culture, and then also into Buddhism, and just sort of an exploration into the different ways that people worship and interact with each other and with God and the universe. And it's been a really interesting experience to kind of see how people do that. And so this pilgrimage follows the path of Kobo Daishi, who is just sort of like a famous Buddhist person who visited these 88 temples sometime in 800, so many, 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 many years ago. And it's become a really important part of Shikoku culture and an important piece of the Buddhist faith, and a really fun and interesting way to explore Japanese culture.
I believe the earliest records of this pilgrimage were in the 12 or 1300s, so people have been doing this for a very long time. It's a big part of Shikoku.
So as foreigners, we're very welcome to come and do this. So far, the Japanese people have been super welcoming and very helpful in showing us what to do and how to do it, and really excited to see us wanting to participate in the ritual and in the pilgrimage itself. They've been really quite happy to share everything that goes on. So that's been really cool, and we've just been trying to follow their lead as much as possible. We started at Temple 1 and we got the staff and the hat and the jacket, which is sort of the minimum that they recommend wearing as you go through this, just to sort of signify that you're a Henro, which is the name of the pilgrims here in Japan. It allows people to sort of know what you're doing and allow them to help you along the way as well, because that's a big part of this journey too, is other people participate in your journey by helping you. They call it osetai, which is like a gift. And so they'll give you, fruit or a beverage or a free cup of coffee or just encouragement or a little bit, just a little something to kind of help you on your way. And it helps you, and also they get to then be a part of your journey.
So the white coat kind of marks you as Ohenro, and then the staff is meant to represent Kobo Daishi being with you throughout. That's what these symbols here mean. Two people on one path. Kobo Daishi's with you through the whole thing.
Normally on a through hike, I say the trail provides, and we've been saying Kobo Daishi provides, which was kind of just a joke to us. But then at our guest house this morning, she was like, oh, we say, Kukai or Kobo Daishi, the one and the same, provides along the way as you go. And we were like, oh, we've been saying that the whole time. So it was cool to know that that is a thing, and it wasn't just us being, kind of silly. Speaking of guest houses and where we've been staying, over the past 24 days, I guess, we've been staying in a combination of guest houses, hostels, temple lodgings, and camping.
Yeah, we're trying to do camping as much as possible when we can. It's a beautiful country, a lot of lovely places to camp, and we're carrying 10 pounds of camping equipment each, so we want to make use of that, make it worthwhile. But a lot of places there just isn't camping available, or it's not actually less expensive to camp than it would be to stay in a hostel or something. So we're just kind of playing it by ear and taking things as they come.
Yeah, so it's been about a third of the time we've been camping, and then the rest has been kind of that mix of hostels, guest houses, and temple lodgings. Ranges somewhere between about 3,500 yen to, I think the most expensive one we paid for was 7,000 yen. And that's always per person, even if you're sharing a room. They always charge everything per person. So if you're traveling as a duo, you actually don't end up saving any money, which is a little bit disappointing, but also it just kind of, we've accepted that is what it is. Traveling as a duo, something to consider is it would be the same price for you to each get your own private room as it would be to share. So,
if that many rooms are available.
Right.
Things have been pretty full a lot of the time recently. It is getting into tourist season.
We've done mostly, I guess, kind of traditional Japanese lodging, which is tatami floors and futon mats on the floor, which is usually pretty comfortable. The walls with the paper what do you call them?
I don't know.
Anyway,
just the paper doors
really
and-
thin paper doors means that if your neighbors are snoring, you are
You're-
participating.
Not exactly private
Yeah,
lodgings.
so not a
It's-
ton of privacy. It's been really comfortable, and all of our hosts have been really, really
very
lovely.
people.
Just super friendly and very welcoming and helpful, and
Absolutely.
giving us as much information as they can, and even making bookings for us. A lot of the places that we're staying are not available to book online. A few of them are available to book over email, but a lot of it is phone calls. And right now we're operating with eSIMs, which means we only have data. We don't have a way to make a phone call. So we've been relying on the kindness of strangers and hospitality workers to make some phone calls for us to help book us accommodation in advance, because it is getting busier as the sakura season, the cherry blossom season comes up, and like the weather's getting better, and people are flocking to the beaches. Tourism is picking up a little, so it's become a little more challenging to plan ahead, which we're actually glad that we brought our camping stuff because of that, because it gives us more options to be a little less prepared than maybe other people probably should be.
Yeah. A lot of people are surprised that they're like, "Where are you staying tomorrow?" And we're like, "I don't know.
I don't know.
We'll figure it out."
So a little bit of a laissez-faire attitude, but I think that's how we like to
It's been
operate.
working out pretty well so far.
Yeah.
The Henro House and Hostel people are pretty networked and connected, so a lot of the time they're like, "Oh, where are you staying tomorrow?" And if you don't know, they might have recommendations or be willing to phone or, have in somewhere that's helpful.
Also, a big part of this trail that's sort of different from what I usually do is there's no freedom camping. It's not wild camping. There's no allowance for that, really. So we've been trying really hard to be respectful of the rules and the culture and just like the general way that things are done here, because we want to make sure that we leave things better than we found them, and that we're not making it harder for other people to come and do this trail in the future. So we're only camping in places where it's specifically allowed, and we're not trying to like skirt around the rules or like, bend things to make it easier for us, because we're guests here and we're guests on this trail, and we want to make sure that we respect that and make it easy for people coming after us to do this as well. Doing things like wild camping or staying places that you're not supposed to is really just not a part of the spirit of this adventure, or like the way that I personally like to travel. I like to make sure that I'm not only like an ambassador for who I am and what I represent on these trails, but also like leave it better that I found it in a way that also allows other people to do it behind me, without like having things shut down or putting no camping signs up, or like, leaving some kind of impact that it negatively impacts the people that come after us on trail.
As far as we can tell, there used to be more free camping sites available around, but things have been shut down and no-noed because people were not treating them respectfully. So
we are doing our very best to not contribute to that problem. So part of that means spending a little bit more money in some of these places where like camping's not allowed, or
it's discouraged,
it's not really official,
Yeah.
So we're trying to stick to our app. If you want to pull up the Henro Helper, we've been using the Henro Helper app. It's just mostly a map with sort of waypoints on it that show you, where camping is allowed, where Henro houses are. Henro houses are sort of the official guest houses that you can stay on along the route. And it will also give you, rest stops and onsens, which are pretty nice, and things like that.
So it's showing our route here with all the temples marked, or those big black markers, and then you can see that we can mark, little camping and stay areas as well to plan out our days and how far we're going to go.
It doesn't do a super good job of telling you how far things are, but it does give you a rough idea of where you need to go and where you can stay and what things are appropriate for where you are at the moment. So right now we're on the beach. We're borrowing this campsite rest area situation to do a little Q&A. As far as camping goes, if you've been following, you have seen my gear. Adam is using the big old Agnes.
Big Aggie.
And I have downsized to a Nemo Osmo Hornet ultralight one-person situation. I just wanted something a little bit smaller and a little more discreet. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know
Very
that
bright.
Big Agnes is basically glow in the dark, and it's pretty hard to be stealthy. And I have more plans for the rest of this year, and I don't necessarily want a giant beacon on my tent. Brand new to all of this.
I am, so I had to kind of just get a bunch of new stuff. I'm carrying a 35-liter pack, which is a bit on the small side, but for what we're doing, it's been working out pretty well. I have my bedroll strapped to the bottom of it, but then everything else fits pretty well. Sleeping bags, clothes, toiletries, tent. It's all in there.
Yeah.
All in all, my pack I think is about 9 kilo.
Which is pretty dang
which
good.
is pretty good. It's not too much of a burden, though. We are climbing mountains.
So everything
which
feels
is-
like a burden.
Yeah, every kilo counts.
Yeah.
At that point. But yeah, it's been nice. It's been holding up well. Had to have the rain cover on fairly often because it is wet country.
Yeah, being by the ocean most of the time, we've gotten quite a lot of rain, quite a lot of wind. Last night we were intending to camp actually right here, but we stopped maybe 4 kilometers shy and luckily found a place to book in at a guest house because it was raging thunderstorms all night long and we would not have had a good time. Yeah, so as far as camping equipment, you can definitely do this trail with no camping equipment. You could literally just carry a day pack with a change of clothes and some room for snacks and be totally
Absolutely
comfortable.
fine. And we've seen a lot of people doing that.
Most people.
We're in the minority that we're carrying camping gear for sure.
Yeah. I just felt like it was part of the experience that I wanted to have, and I thought that Adam would also enjoy that.
fair enough.
And it also allows us a little bit of extra flexibility when we're not being really good at planning things, so that we can also kind of pick and choose our mileage and kind of do some of those in-between days that are either a little bit longer than normal or a little bit shorter, and then camp at some pretty beautiful places.
Some lovely spots on the ocean.
Met lots of really nice people. So far, most of the henros are Japanese, I would say.
Yeah.
Although most of the ones that we have interacted with have been foreign, which, makes sense because we're all sort of operating in English mainly on the foreign side. We met people from the US, from
Australia,
Canada,
Italy, Canada. Yeah.
Denmark,
the
Netherlands,
multiple.
Germany,
Spain.
Yeah.
All over the place. There's lots of people from all walks and corners doing this.
At all ages. So I think we're on the younger side, being in our 30s. We've met maybe 2 people in their early 20s, and then everyone else is sort of 30s all the way up to mid 70s.
Yeah, some of the Japanese henro we've run into were 78, 82, been doing this
Some
a
older
while.
folks. Yeah. Many of them on their, 3rd, 4th, 5th pilgrimage at this point in their lives. So that's pretty cool to see that this is something you can do well into your 80s. You probably just take it a little slower.
We're both wearing Ultra Trail runners.
Oh yeah, you want to see?
There's a lot of road walking in this. It's 80-90% road walking. So big hiking boots aren't going to be your friend here. Having something with a good sole for road walking, a trail runner of some sort definitely seems to be the way to go.
Yeah, something with a little more cushioning for your knees and joints, because walking on pavement for 25 kilometers every day is harder on your feet than walking on trails.
Yeah.
I have definitely noticed the difference in my feet. They get tired much sooner than they would on a trail.
Yeah, my blisters have blisters at this point, so having a great time.
Yeah. Yeah, how has your experience with the physicality of it all been? Because you kind of went from couch to 1200.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bold change in my lifestyle for sure. Because I spent most of my day at my computer. I walked to the grocery store around. I don't have a car or a bike or anything, so I'm walking a bit, but not much. Everything is within a 15-minute walk of my house. So this has definitely been a shock to the system. But I've been doing well. And the first day we did 16 kilometers and I was tapped, dying. Didn't think I was going to make it through the night. Now we can do it takes 30 kilometers in a day for me to feel like I'm dying. So that's definitely a big improvement. I've lost the weight of my backpack off my belly, so that made things easier as well. But yeah, my feet hurt. I've definitely had some sore days, but yeah, there's generally good amount of fairly flat space between the big hills and spikes in terrain. So it's been manageable so far.
We've had a few challenging days where it was kind of all trail, all up. But for the most part, it's relatively rolling, pretty long stretches of more or less flat. So it gives your legs a chance to rest in between the bigger days of climbing. Yeah,
we had a couple days that were around 1,000, 1,200 meters of elevation in the day. But after a couple days of that earlier, around Temple 12 and Temple 21, 22, hasn't been more than like 300 meters in a day probably of elevation.
Yeah, typically. Yeah, so we did Temple 37 yesterday. And have you got your book handy? I feel like we should show the book.
Sure.
So we're at Temple 37 yesterday, and then we will be to Temple 38 probably not tomorrow, but the next day, because it's way down at the very like tip of the peninsula. So it's going to take us a couple days to get there. But at each temple, there are some options of like things you can choose to participate in, really. We purchased a book, which looks like this. And we got the ones that have like cool pictures of every temple in it. And then once you've visited the main shrine and sort of the ancillary shrine, you have the option to recite the Heart Sutra at each of those shrines as just part of your rites and rituals. And then once you've kind of completed your tour of the temple, you go into the main office and you get your book signed. So someone with some level of authority has a calligraphy brush and 3 red stamps that they will put in your book, and then they will hand sign it for you. It costs 500 yen every time you do it. So by the end of our trip, that is going to be like a $500 book.
Yeah.
So it's not cheap, but it is how you support the local temples, and it's we're participating and we're using the temple's facilities, and it's a good way to give back, and that's how we're participating. And it's a really
incredible
cool memento.
souvenir. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That we participated in the creation of.
Yeah, in the entire pilgrimage.
So we're closing on halfway now. That'll be full by the end.
Oh, food? The food is delicious.
Yeah.
We are a big fan of ramen, udon. We haven't had sushi yet. It has been less popular than I anticipated.
Seems to be a more Tokyo thing.
Maybe.
We had a lot when we...
Yeah, a lot of noodles here. Udon is kind of the big thing in Shikoku.
Yep.
And what else? Some katsu. Katsu curry.
Katsu curry. So good.
Very good.
Love it. Okonomiyaki.
Okonomiyaki
cabbage
is
omelet
the
kind of thing.
Omelet thing that's very good. And then they put barbecue sauce on the top, and it is excellent.
Takoyaki is the fried octopus balls that are delicious.
I'm not into it. Into like a night market and had some, gyozas and bits and pieces and fried things, and then a lot of our days actually are eating from the convenience stores, mostly because that's kind of what's along the trail. If you're not going to sit down in a restaurant, they've got Lawson's, Family Mart, or 7-Eleven, and sometimes some like smaller off-brand ones, and they stock all kinds of food.
Fast food restaurants aren't super common here. Like there's McDonald's occasionally, but like most of the kind of like fast food needs are met by the convenience stores here. They have, fresh hot chicken sandwiches and things that you can get at all of them. And it's pretty good quality overall. It's
been really good. You can get like a meal, and then in the convenience store, they will heat it up for you. Yeah. They've also got hot water in there, so you can like grab a cup of ramen. They've got hot coffee. It's made by the cup. Iced coffee or hot coffee. They've got, fruit smoothies in some of these places. They've got all kinds of beverages. They also sell alcohol. So they're super convenient. You can kind of get whatever you need in there. So we've been living off a lot of that. So we're ended up spending, I'd say somewhere between like $5 and $7 a meal. So we're probably $25 a day on food, I would guess.
Yeah, something in that range.
Probably. Depending. Sometimes we'll take a ramen to a campsite, and that's obviously cheaper, but...
And then also we like to dip into local supermarkets occasionally. They don't usually have as good a selection, but they usually have wonderful people, and it's nice to support local communities when we can. And they always give us oranges or bananas or just little extra things on top of what we get. They're very kind always.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is this culture of osettai, which is like gift giving to the henros. So I think we mentioned it, you wear the cloak and you've got the stick, and that sort of signals to everybody that you are a henro, you're on the pilgrimage, and then people get to participate along the pilgrimage with you by, gifting you little bits and pieces. Yes. So we've received fruit, beverages, lots of cups of coffee,
a keychain, lots
stickers.
Of just little things that people just
that they want to support us as we're going, and that gives them a little sense of like being on the journey with us, and it's definitely part and parcel of the pilgrimage culture.
Yeah, we've had multiple times where we've stopped into a little hole-in-the-wall cafe in the morning just to get a coffee and go, and we get a coffee, drink it, and then we're like, how much? And they're like, osettai.
Yeah, so it's
it's great. It's been
just
wonderful.
For you. Yeah. As far as English goes, there's very little English spoken. We,
Yeah,
probably
it's pretty,
less than one person a day who can interact with us in English, which, of course is on us.
Yeah, absolutely. I speak a tiny bit of like little broken Japanese. I can kind of like get some thoughts across, but not full conversations. And then sometimes having, a bit of broken English to a bit of broken Japanese can, have the semblance of a conversation.
It's definitely a challenge. It's one of the bigger challenges, I think, is the language barrier. But the Translate app has been super helpful. Yeah, people don't mind waiting a second while you type something out and then show them. But multiple conversations that way where we just type back and forth to each other and, use some hand gestures. Most of the signage is in Japanese or sort of the phoneticized English version of Japanese. So you do kind of have to learn a little bit or just be engaged with Japanese to kind of figure out where you're going. So he learned the katakana kind of
it's
alphabet.
like an alphabet. If you're interested in coming to Japan and doing that, just learning the katakana actually gets you a long way, because that's how they write out foreign loan words, basically, is they use the katakana alphabet. And so there's a surprising amount of English around Japan, and if you just learn the katakana, you can actually know where all the ramen and udon places are and get a decent kind of grasp of directions and those sorts of things. So it's actually, it's not a huge investment to just learn that a little bit, and it helps a surprising amount.
Yeah. So he did that on Duolingo, and then, 10 years ago I lived in Taiwan, so I learned Chinese, so then I can read a lot of the kanji characters. So between the two of us, we can usually figure out where we're going.
Yeah.
We can't always say what we need, but we can figure out where we're going.
We can read a fair bit. We can't speak much or hear much, but the reading is decent.
Yeah, but we managed thus far, 500 kilometers in, and we haven't been lost or stranded.
Yep.
So I'd say that's pretty good. We've managed the trains and the buses. This pilgrimage is not one of those very strict continuous footpath kinds of things like we see in North America, where you kind of want to tie everything together in a neat little bow. This is really more of cultural immersion, and sometimes you are following the map and it just says take the train now, because there's nowhere else to stay for the next 40 kilometers.
Yeah.
So you hop on a train and take it to a couple stops down, and then there's places to camp and places to stay. So we've done a little bit of trains, probably just 40 kilometers of trains, and then we took maybe 10 kilometers of buses to kind of get us in and out of where we needed to go. But everything else has been on foot.
Yep.
Which has been pretty cool. It covers more or less the questions that I've gotten from Patreon and from Instagram and just from general texts from friends and family. Obviously, if you've got more, please put them down below. We've got 700 more kilometers to do, so I'm sure we'll come up with more stuff.
Yep.
But so far, we've just really enjoyed just being so immersed in all of this. The tiny villages we walk through are so beautiful. I mean, now all the cherry blossoms are coming out. The architecture is really interesting.
Yes.
The coastlines are beautiful.
And just, lovely places, lovely people. It's just been a great time.
Yeah. So we're really enjoying ourselves, and we're really excited to kind of see what comes next. We, turn the corner and start heading back towards Tokushima. It's crazy.
Yeah. All right.
There you go. That's all we got for you. Until
Bye-bye.
next time.